What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikiPikaPapa, and I am pumped because today we are bringing in a bunch of videos we've done in the past, and it kind of all culminates in this, right? I did a video where I showed you, hey, how do I get cards ready for PSA screening? And then I showed you a video on the end result, right? Like after I got done getting all those cards cleaned, getting them ready to go to PSA, I showed you what that looks like. Then on the other video, I showed you guys, hey, listen, these are the things that I'm targeting in February. I kind of teased this video a little bit, and I said, hey, this is one of the reasons why I'm targeting them in February. And here we are. Now I'm going to show you all of that put together into one, and the whole purpose of that is to show you guys how I try and generate a little extra cash on the side, okay? So we all have a finite amount of money, right? Unless you're Bill Gates or, you know, somebody with just unlimited funds. Good for you. Be my friend. But I've got a finite amount of money that I can spend on Pokemon every single month. I got a wife, I've got 2 kids, but if I generate additional revenue, I can do whatever the heck I want with that. So this is how I try and generate a couple extra nickels every single month. I buy raw cards, I send them into PSA to get graded, and then when they come back, I try and sell them on the market for a profit. Now, I have been doing this in the sports card space for a long time. I've been doing this in the Pokemon space for a shorter amount of time, but I'm more bullish on doing this in the Pokemon space than the sports card space. In sports cards, you have to worry about injuries and bad seasons. There's just a lot of factors that can sway the value of a card. Here I feel like it's a little more steady. You have reprints, you have restocks, you know, you have stuff like that that happens. But if you're buying the older cards, you have pretty much you have more of a steady Eddie type flow of things. So we'll obviously talk about protecting the downside. I'm going to share with you guys how I identify opportunities, and I'm going to give you some real life examples of some things that I'm working on right now that are potential flips. So without further ado, let's get into it. And I also want to say this, we do data stuff like this all the time on the channel. We're having a ton of fun. We're building this awesome culture. So if this is your first time being here, you can check out some of my old videos. If you like them, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment down below. We really are doing some cool stuff here, and it's certainly not because of me, it's because we're building a great community, so we would love to have you be a member of that. Now, this video is very, very timely because I'm talking about PSA grading, and look, PSA is doing a $15 TCG special right now, which is huge. Any dollars that you can save on the front end just helps you improve your ROI, it helps you improve the profit margin at the back end, and it mitigates risk, right? The less we spend on the front end, then if we make a little less on the back end, it's okay. I like to factor in $20 per card grading fee. With this, I can factor in a little bit less, but as I talk through the pre-screeners in full transparency, sometimes the pre-screeners, they don't get the same deals that we do because they're bulk sellers and bulk submitters, because they're bulk submitters, they don't always get these specials. So sometimes, even when there's a $15 graded card special going on at PSA, the pre-screener is still going to charge me the $20. Now, you might be saying, that's crazy, why would you spend that money? I've done a lot of thinking and I've tried to put some math to it. Like at the end of the day, if I'm going to submit them, I have to do a $99 membership fee for the course of the year. I run the risk of getting PSA 7s and PSA 8s. Even though I've done this for a long time, I certainly don't have the perfect eye. You know, and then, so the grading fees. I'll show you an example. Matter of fact, let's switch that slide right now and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So these are the cards that I went over with you in a video, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 videos ago, and I showed you this is the end result. These are ones that I'm sending to the pre-screener, which the pre-screener is going to, at the end of the day, send to PSA. So in the upper right-hand corner, it was a 60-card submission. You'll see that there are 17 cards that the pre-screener sent me a picture of and said, hey, you can submit these if you want, but our suggestion is you don't. And you see that they actually write on the Card Saver 1 the reasons why. And I went ahead, and obviously there's a lot of football in there. I still do football on the side. But I went ahead and magnified the Pokemon ones because that's relevant to this channel. So if you'll see that these 3 cards, the one on the far left, the guy said, hey, this is OC left to right, I wouldn't submit this. The next card, he said, this is OC top to bottom, both on the front and the back, and you'll see the squiggly lines with an 8. He thought this was an 8. They try and screen out 8s for me. So, and then on this other one, same thing. He said, hey, I think this is an 8 because it's OC left to right. This does not mean that they are perfect. This doesn't mean that I am guaranteed to get all 9s and 10s back. They're human, just like you and me, which means sometimes 8 sneak through, which is okay. It's not the end of the world because it's a numbers game, like it's a volume game. I am always trying to, like I said, this was a 60 card submission. Those football cards, they'll flip for big money. These Pokemon cards, that was really my first venture into this space. So we shall see, but you guys are coming with me along every step of the road. And I'm really, really excited to see where this pans out. So I thought this was awesome. I don't know if you guys think this is cool or not, but really neat to see that it took me 2 days to get it to the pre-screener. It took them 2 days to do their pre-screening, and these are already off and on their way to PSA. I will say this, they tend to, this isn't, don't don't hold my feet to the fire on this one. They tend to have a little bit of a quicker turnaround time. It's because I don't know if they go to a special aisle as a bulk submitter. I don't know what. I wouldn't say we get better grades, but I do say they can from time to time get better turnaround times. And PSA has been getting great turnaround times for TCG cards. So they've been turning around TCG in about a month, and that is why you saw that special. So PSA has different levers that they pull. When they don't have enough submissions, which is indicated by a faster turnaround time, when they don't have enough submissions, they lower the price, because lowering the price gets more people to send them in. Then they have the coffers full again, and they start, the submission time will go back up. So with all that being said, my cards are there before this $15 grading special came out. So hopefully these cards are going to be turned around really, really quickly. Anyways, I thought this was really cool. I hope you guys think this is awesome too. So the next step is here. How do I look for cards to flip? How do I identify these? What do I look through? So I spent an unrealistic, unattainable amount of time on Pokedata.io, and I'm always looking for cards that I could maybe invest in, cards that I could buy raw, and this was one of the ones that jumped out at me. So if you were watching my February video, my top 5 video, this was one of the boxes that I thought was a great buy. So when I looked at this chart initially, I always filter for PSA 10, PSA 9, and raw cards. And the green line is the PSA 10, the orange line is the PSA 9, and the blue line is the raw. When I see that big gap between the 10 and the raw, that's what I like. But also, you see how it's got a lot of little wiggles and waggles to it? That means that there's a lot of sales of this card. When the lines are flat and when the lines just have these big ups and downs and breaks, and it looks like a bunch of stairs, that means that there's very few sales, because you want there to be a lot of velocity. You want these cards to be exchanging hands a lot, because what you want to do is when you get them back from PSA, you want to be able to flip them quickly, right? You want to use that money, reallocate it, and use it to buy more things. So you'll see, not only do I look at the chart, that gets me interested, point one. Then on the left, you can see the number of sales. On the left, I saw this card has a lot of velocity. So now I'm thinking, all right, there's something there. Let's take the next step. Let's dig in a little deeper. So what I do then is I go to eBay and I go to sold items, because I don't trust anybody. I have this theory, it's called trust but verify. So yes, I use Pokedata.io to give me direction, but then I always do my own due diligence on the background. I go to eBay, I go to sold listings, and I look for the actual prices that these items are selling for. So this is PSA 9 on the left, this is PSA 10 on the right. I see some sales, I see some in the 30s, I see some in the 40s, $39.99, $42 for PSA 9. PSA 10s look for they're selling right around 120 bucks. So, now I know what a PSA 9 and PSA 10 are selling for today. Then I look for raw cards, because at the end of the day, if we want to flip them, we got to find some raw cards. Now, it is hard to look for high-grade, older raw cards. You have to have a sharp eye. I have this huge monitor in my room that I use when I'm sniping for football cards. Those football cards you saw on the previous page, like some of those are from early 2000s, 2010s, so you really got to have a sharp eye. The beautiful thing of this is these cards are relatively new, so they're easier, not easy, easier to find in high grade. I have my big monitor, high definition. I'm always looking for little tips and things of white on the back of the card. Typically the front, I'm looking for good centering. But those things just come with time. You have to practice. You have to buy a bunch of raw cards on eBay in order to get good at that over the years. And you'll see that these raw cards are selling for, anywhere from, it looks $15 to $18, $16.99, so it's selling right around there. But then I take all of that and I also have to factor in the gem rate. And I talk about this a lot on the channel. And this is PSA website right here. These are all of the submissions. So at the time that I pulled this, there were 2,240 of these cards that had been submitted to PSA for grading. 1,191 of those had come back a PSA 10. So that gives us a 53.17% gem rate. Now, I know not everybody submits all of their cards, right? There are people out there like you and me who are playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers, and we're going to look at it and we're going to say, well, I'm not submitting this because this is OC. So this isn't a true representation of the actual gem rate that you're going to get out of the boxes. But we use a pre-screener. I feel really, really good that the cards that make it through the pre-screener and end up at PSA fall into the 9 or 10 bucket. I'd say 90% of the time. There are a few that make it back PSA 8, whatever. I donate it, give it to a children's hospital. I can sell it on eBay for a loss if I want to. But at the end of the day, my 9s and 10s are going to make up any loss that I have on that. And also, not a ton of them get through. It just doesn't happen all that often. So then I look at, okay, so let's take out the 1,191 PSA 10s out of the 2,240, and out of the cards that are remaining, 901 of them ended up with a PSA 9. So if it doesn't get a PSA 10, 85.89% were ended up at a PSA 9. Again, I have a pre-screener who's looking at them, so I feel like that rate is going to be even higher for the cards that I have that get through. And again, if I have cards that the pre-screener rules out, like those 3 Charizards that I showed you earlier where they said this is off center, I will sell those raw on eBay. It's not like I'm stuck. It's not like it's a baked in loss that there's nothing I can do to recover any money, right? I can still sell them on eBay. I'll look for the lowest buy it now. I'll probably sell those for $10 each, maybe $8 each after everything. So I'll recoup $24 out of that, which again, I've got some money invested in it. I probably lost $10 on that deal all in, but that's fine because I sent 15 through, 3 got rejected. I have 12 sitting at PSA right now that I feel really, really good are gonna be 9s or 10s, and that limits my downside because I can sell those for $24, and I put it all into an Excel spreadsheet and make sure it makes sense. But this is super important, and if you stay to the end of the video, you're going to see some examples as to why this is really, really important. So then what I do is I put it in this, I have all this in Excel, but I put all these numbers in because this is going to tell me if this makes sense or not. Because again, playing chess instead of checkers, we can't just go with thoughts and feelings. We have to make sure we have data to validate everything. So I put this in at a raw cost of $18.38. I'm going to use rounder numbers as we get into it, but I wanted to be real precise on this first one. So I put this in at a raw value of $18.38. Then I look at the lowest buy it now price on eBay. Because these cards, it's a race to the bottom. I talked about turning and burning. The minute these cards get back from PSA, the very first thing I want to do is I want to put them on eBay and I want to be at the bottom. Doesn't have to be much lower than the bottom, but I want to turn these cards as quickly as possible. So I always factor in the lowest PSA 10, buy it now, right now on eBay. Then, like I said, I'm looking for velocity. So have there been more than 10 of these sold in the last 45 days? Yes. What is the lowest PSA 9 buy it now on eBay? $37.95. Check, got that. Are there more than 10 of those sold in the last 45 days? Yep, we got the velocity. I have my gem rate, I have my PSA 9 rate. Now over on the right, what does 4 of those cards cost me? About $74 raw. What is my grading cost? I factor $16 per card. I know that they're doing a $15 grading special right now, but I figure $1 in for insurance and shipping and all that. Again, I would rather project high and be surprised on the downside. So for all in, to buy these 4 cards, to send them off to get graded, cost me $138. What does that look like? Next, I do 2 scenarios every single time, and they're the same scenarios regardless. I do the scenario 1, where I get 1 PSA 10 and 3 PSA 9s. This is assuming the pre-screener does their great job. This is assuming these are new cards, so there's a high probability we're getting 9s and 10s, hopefully. And then I do all the math, right? So I say, hey, listen, PSA 10, I get 1. Those are selling for $120.25. PSA 9, there's 3 of them. I think I said it was $47 and change, so that comes to $113.85. I do buy it nows with free shipping. I think you get more you get more attention with that. So then I say, hey, to ship those 4 cards, it's going to cost me $12. There's a 13% seller's fee on eBay, so I factor in the 13% seller's fee. We just went over buying the 4 cards, getting the 4 cards graded is going to cost us $138. So if you add $120.25 and $113.85, and then you deduct the shipping, the fees, the cost, your net return on that is $53.67, which is almost a 39% return over how long? Who knows? A couple months? Maybe? That also lets me know that, hey, if I have a net return here of $53.67, even if that buy it now price comes down a couple dollars, right? Even if over the next couple months this card loses some steam, it loses some heat, it's probably not going to see a 20% drop in a couple months, in 60, 90 days. It's just not likely. Not saying it's impossible. Anything can happen, right? All of this is risk versus reward. All of this is you making an educated decision on what you're doing with your money. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to fall enough. I still have a lot of downside in that $53.67 protection. Then I do scenario 2. So this card has a 53% gem rate. So let's say I get lucky, okay? Let's say 2 of them come back as a PSA 10, 2 of them come back as a PSA 9. Then the PSA 10s get $240.50. The PSA 9 gets $75.90. Again, $12 in shipping, more seller fees, right? Because you sold for a higher dollar amount, so $41.13. Same cost, $138 for a net of $125.27 and a percent return of $90.77%, okay? 90.77% net return. So that is how I look at cards. That is how I try and find opportunity. There is a lot of steps in this. I wish it was easy. I wish it was fast. You could probably do more, off the hip type stuff, but I am just so thorough in everything that I do because I always try and mitigate downside risk. So that was one card. Here's the next one. We go through the same exercise for the Jolteon. I am not going to go through this in as much detail as I did before because you've got it. But again, look at that chart. The chart on the right looks similar. The chart on the left looks similar. Same thing. I check the prices in PSA 9. I check the prices in PSA 10. Same thing. I check the gem rate. Gem rate on this is a little worse, 3% worse. And PSA 9 rate is a little worse as well, right? 84%. So that's something to factor in. I put it all in here right now. So the lowest PSA 10 buy it now is 120 bucks. Lowest PSA 9 is 90 or 43. So a little bit more oomph there on a PSA 9 for the Jolteon. Then I factor in the gem rates, factor in the card cost. The card cost on this is a little bit less than the other one. I've actually picked a couple of these up that look really good for $12 or $13 here recently. So I think you can actually get lower than the 16.5. So then you got your all-in cost. We take it through the same math. Same math. Scenario 1, again, you're looking at a net return of $74.63 in scenario 1. Not bad. Not bad for a couple months' work. And your actual hands-on time here isn't a ton. If you're like me, I love searching on eBay. I get up before everybody else in this house. I'm an early riser. So I'll sit on eBay and I'll thumb through some of the recent things that have been posted. And when I see things I like, I pull the trigger or I save it and I watch it and I'll bid on auctions later. But again, this is one where it looks really, really good. It looks like there's some great opportunity here. So this is one that I'm actively buying as well. Then believe it or not, I looked at this one as well, the Flareon, just because I figured I'd keep it all in the family. And when I see a pattern, when I see the two VMAXs doing well, I go ahead and look at the third. You see the pattern for the PSA 10s is a little crazier here. You see it's got some low plateaus and some higher plateaus. And you see it's starting to come down and it's flattened out. That gave me some cause for concern. I was like, hey, I have to look into this. Let's make sure that this card is still selling with a lot of velocity. And as I did that, I saw that it is. It might be a glitch on Polkadata.io, but this is why we trust but verify. I use Polkadata.io to give me direction, but then I always go through and do my own due diligence. I always go through and do my own research on the back end. So here's the PSA 9s and the PSA 10s. Same thing, PSA 10 gem rate, 51.68%. So, somewhere in between the first two. Not a bad PSA 9 rate. Then we go in here, we do the math all over again. These cards are much cheaper raw. You can easily get these around $12, and sometimes that's a great opportunity. Like your actual cost in this is a huge factor in this. Now, what you see here is, look, it's the lowest PSA 10 that we've seen so far. So these are going for 105 bucks on Buy It Now right now. The other ones were 120. So despite the lower raw cost, you're losing $15 in PSA 10 Buy It Now, so that's going to hurt everything on the back end. But again, we just bake everything out here. I run through scenario 1, I run through scenario 2. This card, it's not bad. It's an interesting one, but I think the Flareon's probably the one where we have the most, not the Flareon, I'm sorry, the Jolteon is the one where I think we have the most opportunity here, where scenario 1 and scenario 2, look the Primus. But certainly all three of them are worth buying and selling and trying to get those PSA grades for. I'm buying all three actively, so I just think there's enough in all of them. So then I thought to myself, hey, if these VMAXs are doing good, what about the Vs? Does it make sense just to buy the box as a whole, rip it out, flip the two promo cards, and then you can keep the packs, sell the packs, open the packs, whatever you want? So I decided, hey, let's look at these Vs that come in the pack as well. Why not? So you see the PSA 10s, you see the PSA 9s, you see the raw grades, you see the velocity, check, check, check. Again, we go through here. Cards are selling well, cards are selling strong. Then I got here and I was like, man, we were so close. The gem rate is much lower on this one. I don't know what it is. I don't know if this has got traditional surface issues. I don't know if it's centering issues. I don't know if people just aren't screening these as well. But when I see this gem rate, immediately I was like, okay, this isn't one that I'm going to go after raw. I would much rather go after the VMAX version versus the V version, simply because the data is telling me it's much harder to get in a PSA 10. So I still went through and did all the math in here just to grade everything out, just to give you guys an idea. We still get to scenario 1, which has great upside. Scenario 2 has great upside. The reason you're going to see these much bigger upsides and percent of return is because the PSA 10s hold so much more value. Look at this. The highest VMAX PSA 10 that we saw was $120. This one is $135. Why? Scarcity, right? Like, this one's much harder to get in a PSA 10, so it commands a higher value. No surprise, right? So Yeah, there's great upside if you get one PSA 10. You know, that percent return is the highest that we've seen thus far. I just don't think I'm messing with it. I think I would rather go with the others. I'm all about the PSA 10 life. I think they're easier to move versus PSA 9s, so I certainly don't want a ton of PSA 9s of these cards because you also don't want to be the one who's flooding the market with them because you can actually tank your own price by doing that. So scenario 1, scenario 2. Scenario 2, obviously, you know, you get 2 PSA 10s of this, you're blowing the roof off. Next one, and then I always do a second one, even if the first one, so the first V told me there isn't a there, but you have to do a second because what if the one is an anomaly? What if it's, you know, the other two are fire? So again, we'll go through this super quickly. Pattern's good, velocity's good, sales, check, gem rate's the same. 30% gem rate on this V, 50% on the V maxes. This isn't for me. I'm just not taking the risk, right? Again, you see a higher, lowest PSA 10 by it now because of rarity. Go through here, scenario 1, looks good. I mean, even if you get 1, 10, and 3 9s, but again, I find risk when I'm trying to sell a bunch of 9s. Scenario 2 looks solid too. And that's it. Like, I know this was a long video. This is probably the longest video I've ever done, but you have to understand the risk, you have to understand the reward, you have to understand all of the work and all of the data mining that goes into finding these opportunities. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? So if it was easy, everybody would making a ton of money flipping cards, but it takes time, it takes patience, it takes experience, it takes some guts, right? Because you're buying raw cards, you're sending them off to PSA, you're hoping it gets, you know, you get good returns, you're hoping that it turns around in time and the market doesn't crash. Like it's not for the faint of heart, but I do it. I've been successful with it. It doesn't mean that I will continue to find success in it, but I wanted to share it with you guys because I know that, hey, we're always trying to find an edge. We're always trying to be the alphas in this space, and it's certainly an interesting way to approach it, and I haven't heard anybody else sharing it. So, as always, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for sticking with me all the way through to the end. I've got some cool videos coming up. You know, we're closing in on 400 subscribers. At 500 subscribers, I'm going to do a Crown Zenith ETB giveaway. I've been thinking a lot about what to do, and I just want to reward all of you. I know some of you have been with me from the very beginning. It just warms my heart to have this amazing community that we're building. So, when we get to 500, I'm going to do my first ever giveaway, and I'm just so excited to do it. I can't wait to send somebody a Crown Zenith ETB. Like, it's just it's gonna make me so happy. But all right, everybody, you guys have an epic one. I appreciate you as always, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.